Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 86, coming at you at this beautiful Thursday evening from the valley. Sunshine, nice 70s. Your boy is in heaven right now before it gets too damn hot. But I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts and videos on YouTube. And we have a show, man. Because I didn't record this till Thursday, we have a loaded announcement by Dana White with some fantastic matchmaking. We're going to recap UFC Fight Night Vegas 102 and preview this weekend's Fight Night Seattle, which has been through the ringer. And not going to lie, kind of happy I didn't invest in a trip to Seattle for this card. But let's get it going. So, some fights that have been announced. We have Jalen Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes at UFC 313. Absolute banger. We got Bruno Silva out in his fight against Joshua Van. But Joshua Van is fighting Ray Suaria on UFC 313. Van, as always, staying active. I was excited to see him take on Bruno Silva. But I believe Ray's undefeated, a young prospect. That should be a good fight as well. On the Seattle card, we got last-minute fight announcement. Bellator's own, I actually think he left Bellator and fought in another promotion, maybe LFA. Paige Van Zant's boyfriend, Austin Vanderford, maybe even husband, just kept his last name. She kept her name. Taking on Nikolai Valentinnikov in Seattle. So we get some new faces to the UFC there. Let's see if Austin Vanderford can probably win the biggest fight of his career. Not the best competition, but biggest fight. We have Josanne Nunez and Priscilla Kohara, March 15th. We have Leon Edwards taking on Sean Brady, March 22nd. That's an awesome fight, as Leon Edwards was booked against Jack Della Maddalena, but we'll get to that in a minute. That will be the headliner in London. We have Dan Ige, Sean Woodson at UFC 314. This card got fully announced on Dana White's Instagram. When they say Dana's going live on Instagram, you know it's going to be good. And the UFC 314 is going on in Miami. We have an UFC 313 in Vegas, UFC 315 in Montreal, Canada. We got Jeff Neal and Carlos Prats, an absolute scrap there. Huge opportunity for Carlos Prats. We have UFC newcomer Patricio Pitbull taking on Yair Rodriguez. I really hope that is going to be official. It's only verbally announced, but that would be an absolute fun fight. Would have been even more fun if we got Patricio in the UFC a couple years ago. We have officially final, lots of rumblings about Michael Chandler, Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. His prove-it fight. Let's see if he's ready for the big leagues. Chandler is in a must-win situation, if you ask me. We have Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopez going for the vacated featherweight championship, so Volk could re-get his strap back. We have Gilbert Burns and Michael Morales moving from UFC 314 to Canada. We have, in Canada, the co-main, Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot. Manon actually getting the title fight. Rumors of Zhang Weili, Valentina, but I'm assuming Zhang will take the winner of this fight. So hopefully Valentina could win probably. I mean, Alexa Grasso was tough, but this is going to be a tough one. And then for the middleweight or welterweight scrap title headliner for Quebec or Montreal, we have Bilal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena. Jack getting a title shot, so we'll see if he could handle the grappling of Bilal Muhammad. Then April 12th, we have Cedricus Dumas and Michael Oleksiejczuk. In Kansas City, we have the retirement fight. A little out of left field here, but I'm all for it. Anthony Smith's retirement fight against Zhang Mingyang. Should be an awesome striking battle. On April 26th, we have Chelsea Chandler, Jocelyn Edwards, and Matt Schnell's retirement fight against Jimmy Flick. He wants to go out with the bang, so they gave him Jimmy Flick. Then on May 3rd, announced in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, we have Santiago Ponzinibbio and Daniel Rodriguez, 2 vets going at it. And the 5-round main event in the bantamweight division, Corey Sandhagen and former champion Davison Figueiredo. That should be an absolute great fight. And we are getting the return of Miesha Tate and Yana Santos. Then in May 10th, we have Marc-Andre Barriol and Bruno Silva. And then also on UFC 315, Alexa Grasso and Natalia Silva. That is a major, major fight in the flyweight division. See if Natalia is ready for the top of the division. We had the Jared Gordon fight called off for the fight night last week. We also have Adam Fugit and Billy Goff off the UFC card in Seattle. And because of Dominic Cruz's retirement, Gene Matsumoto is in against Rob Font. Rob Font went from a week fighting a legend in his retirement fight to now an undefeated young stud prospect. Quite the change for him. We'll talk about this later, but Julia Avila has announced her retirement, as well as Joe Selecki, which is a little bit of a surprise. Young fighter still, retiring, putting his gloves down. Elsewhere in mixed martial arts, we have announced that Jake Hadley and former UFCer Alexander Romanov signing with the PFL, and they will participate in their tournaments as we get dates, times, and those brackets built out in their tournament. And then Rashad Evans, Quentin Jackson officially signed their boxing bout for April 12th in Albuquerque as Rashad's getting ready for the GFL. And the GFL is starting to pick up steam as their fights are coming around the corner. They are announcing bouts. We get legends Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold, which I believe is a rematch. Let me look these up. Chris Weidman fought Luke Rockhold. When? Let's look. He lost to Luke Rockhold via TKO in round 4 back in 2015, which was for the middleweight championship. So Luke Rockhold got his first title. We get, and let's see the age of these guys. Lots of veterans, which will be interesting to see how they perform. Weidman is 40. Luke Rockhold's been having some fun overseas. I don't know how much he's been focused on fighting. He has been grappling, hasn't performed very well, but he is also 40. For more veterans, we have Yoel Romero and Mauricio Shogun Rua, but I don't believe they have fought before. Let's look. Nope, wanting to give 2 veterans a matchup, though. That's the one they asked for, the fans asked for. Apparently, GFL is asking the fans. This is a fun one. We get Uriah Hall and Diego Lima. I mean, Yoel Romero is 47. Shogun is 43. Diego Lima definitely has fallen off the past few years. He's 36, though, still somewhat younger. And Uriah Hall is 40. So that should be fun. We have Fabricio Verdum taking on Frank Mir. Fabricio is 47. Frank Mir is 45. Getting into the 50s damn near. And then we are getting Uriah Faber versus Henan Barao 3. Uriah is 45. Renan is 38. Let's look at their past history. So their first bout was UFC 149 back in July of 2012. Faber won via unanimous decision to win the Bantamweight Championship, and he defended it again against Barao in 2014, where he won via round 1 knockout. We have not seen Uriah Faber fight in 5.5 years, and Renan hasn't fought in 2 years, so that should be interesting. So yeah, lots going on in the world of MMA. Exciting stuff for MMA fans. But this past weekend, we had the Fight Night Vegas 102. A little bit more back to reality on my picks. Took some chances, got bit in the butt a little bit. I went 7-4 in my picks. So overall, for bows and TKOs, I'm at 522 wins, 254 losses, 8 no contests or draws. On the year, a pristine 38-13-1. But to recap this card, there definitely was a lot of decisions until the main card. The early stoppage in the Sadikov and Bonfim fight was definitely a bummer because that could have been a fun fight. But the main card was fun for the most part. RoboCop's power and cardio stole the show even though he took a loss. So I will give it a 5 out of 10. I think that's what I previewed it as well. And a good fight we did not break down. Jose Delgado with a round 1 knockout over Connor Matthews. I'm very high on Jose Delgado here out of the MMA lab, getting a short notice contender series bout to earn his UFC contract. And I figured this would be slight work for him, and that's what it was. But we'll kick it off in the prelims, where Jacqueline Cavalcanti got a unanimous decision over Julia Avila. And this fight was really a tick-for-tat fight, as you would expect. Neither woman really took many chances and threw much volume out there. But to me, it was Jacqueline pressuring forward, putting Julia up against the cage, putting her on her back foot, and she was kind of loading up and waiting, but never really threw the big shots. She is the Raging Panda. We did not see that Raging Panda aggression in this fight. And then round 2, I would say, was Julia's best round, as she did even get a takedown, but she was not able to do much with it and was outstruck. She outstruck Julia the rest of the way. And for a woman who has now since retired, it didn't seem like she wanted to give herself a chance and take many risks, which is a little bit surprising, maybe why she has since chose to retire. Statistically, Julia landed only 57 strikes, 54 of them significant. She had 1 takedown and 2 attempts in 1 minute and 39 seconds of control time. And Jacqueline landed 75 total strikes, 73 of them significant, while going 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. So Jacqueline extends her winning streak to 7. She is 4-0 in the UFC, although some close decisions. She does move 2 spots up in the rankings to number 11. And Julia ends her UFC career on a 2-fight losing streak. Her last win coming in June of 2021 against Julia Stoliarenko. And she moves down 3 spots in the rankings to number 15, even though she's retiring. She should be off of the rankings next week. But what's next for Jacqueline? I think a fight with Carol Hossa would be great. Then we had Walter Walker with a round 1 submission via heel hook over Dontel Mays. A fight I got wrong. I'm not too surprised. But not much transpired in this fight, as Walter was very aggressive in getting a takedown early. He was able to do so. And after some time scrambling on the canvas, Walker went for a heel hook, got it, as Dontel was flat on his back. And now 2 heel hooks in a row, the only wins he's got in the UFC. Mr. Heel Hook at heavyweight, Frank Mir-esque. But I was thinking we might see Mays actually attempt to get takedowns. That was not the case, so I was wrong. Statistically, Dontel only landed 3 total strikes, 1 of them significant. Walter had 5 total strikes, 1 significant. He was 1 for 2 in takedowns, had the submission attempt, and 58 seconds of control time. So Walter now extends his winning streak to 2. He's 2-1 in the UFC. Dontel extends his losing streak to 2. He's 2-4 since 2023. So what's next? Well, now it's time for Walter to face the older brother of the Taffas and take on Justin Taffa. And Mays, he could scrap the little Taffa brother, Junior Taffa. Then in the prelims, we had Gabriel Bonfim with a round 2 submission via Bravo choke over Chaos Williams. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Gabriel. And I figured Gabriel would come through here, but I didn't think it would be in this dominant fashion. I mean, the anticipation wasn't only had for the fans, But it was the fighters as well, as they were measured and cautious early in this fight. They didn't want to be overzealous because both guys possess serious power. But Gabriel showed the aggression and was coming forward and using his grappling early against the veteran Chaos. Then in round 2, Gabriel turned it up a notch, let loose with his hands a little bit, got a takedown again, but was able to sink in a choke to put Chaos completely out, eyes rolled back. And I was just surprised that Chaos wasn't more aggressive with his striking, but the success Bonfim had with his wrestling had to play part in that, and it was just too easy for Gabriel. Statistically, Gabriel landed 35 total and significant strikes. He had 4 takedowns and 5 attempts, 2 submission attempts, and 1 minute and 42 seconds of control time. Now, Chaos landed 23 total strikes, 20 of them significant. So now Gabriel extends his winning streak to 2. He's 4-1 in the UFC, and Chaos ends his 2-fight winning streak, and he starts a new losing streak. I honestly think the UFC should rebook Renat and Bonfim. That makes sense to me. And for Chaos, how about Themba Gorimbo? Then in the prelim headliner, Angela Hill finally getting a split decision win over Ketlin Souza. And no surprise, this was a very, very close fight. And actually came down to a split decision that actually went Angela's way. And I thought Ketlin actually won rounds 2 and 3. But the judges gave round 2 to Angela. And Angela started the fight very well in round 1. Best fight of the round of the fight. And she brought the fight to Ketlin. Ketlin didn't seem to be prepared to let her hands fly early. She was just trying to counter Angela. And Angela was able to get a takedown. And it seemed like she was just going to tire Souza out after round 1. But turn it to round 2. Ketlin's corner got her fired up. She came out landing big shots and had Angela pretty bloodied up. That's why I'm surprised the judges gave it to Angela. Angela was throwing, but it was all Ketlin rolling off, barely hitting her shoulders, no clean shots. And Ketlin was landing the clean shots. But Ketlin was continued that momentum into round 3. Although she got taken down, she somehow was able to get back up pretty quickly, which is impressive being already in round 3 and having to battle through adversity. But she finished the fight a lot stronger than Angela. But you have to credit Angela for being in her 40s. She was bloodied, she was worn down, and somehow was able to dig deep to keep it together until the bell, which is very impressive with how worn out she was. She looked completely exhausted. Now, statistically, Angela landed 103 total strikes, 86 of them significant. She went for 2 for 6 in takedown attempts, so credit to Ketlin defending those later in the rounds. And Angela also had 4 minutes and 31 seconds of control time. Now, Ketlin landed 77 total, so about 36 less. 70 of them significant, 16 significant less, and she was 0 for 2 in takedowns. I would say I do think that Ketlin's significant were a lot more significant than the 86 of Angela. I always am disgruntled with the significant strike stats. But Angela very well could have technically landed more strikes. Now, Angela starts a new winning streak. She's 3-2 since 2023. She stays at 13 in the rankings. And Ketlin ends her 2-fight winning streak. She starts a new losing streak. She's 3-2 since 2023. So what's next? I think the fight to make is Angela and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. That could potentially put the loser into retirement. And for Ketlin, there really isn't a great opponent to book next. But maybe Tisha Pennington would be game, and that would be a good scrap. Moving on to the main card. Another fight I got wrong, but I thought was completely a toss-up. We had Andre Petroski with a unanimous decision over Rodolfo Vieira. And this was a very close fight, but it seemed like Andre was just the more active fighter, even though he wasn't. He was controlling the center of the octagon and driving the fight. The judges gave Andre rounds 1 and 3, and statistically both of those rounds were a tie. And I thought that Rodolfo was landing the cleaner strikes, much like the Souza fight. But the biggest difference was the body language. Rodolfo kind of looked ejected from failing with all of his takedown attempts. and Andre was more willing to let his hands fly. Finally, that's been something that's cost him in fights. But again, I thought Rodolfo landed the more powerful shots and had success when he did throw, but he just didn't throw enough. You figured, especially mid-round 2 and rounds 3, he would have let go a little bit more because he was having that success. But statistically, Rodolfo landed 60 total strikes, 58 significant. He was only 1 for 11 in takedown attempts, so you have to credit Andre, and he had 1 minute and 50 seconds of control time. Now, Andre landed 58 total and 55 significant, so 2 less, 3 less significant, and he was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. So Andre extends his winning streak to 3. He's 4-2 since 2023, and Rodolfo ends his 2-fight winning streak and starts a new losing streak. Now, Andre is called for Bo Nickel. I'm not opposed to that, but I don't think that will be the next fight for Bo. So I think Andre and Junyon Park would be a great battle. And for Rodolfo, a fight with Brad Tavares would be a doozy. Moving on, we had Nazim Sadikov with a round 1 TKO via doctor stoppage over Ismail Bonfim. So the Bonfim brothers went 1-1 on the day. This fight, man, the first round was pretty back and forth. I did think Ismail was the aggressor and was controlling the fight until late in round 1. Sadikov landed a nasty head kick. It was flush, man. It destroyed Bonfim. Bonfim was chicken leg all over the canvas, but somehow he was able to survive to the bell. But the doctor was questioning him, and the officials didn't let the fight continue into round 2, which was a major bummer. But you have to credit Nazim for that beautiful strike. Statistically, Ismail landed 26 total and significant strikes, and Nazim landed 14 total and 13 of them significant. So Nazim starts a new winning streak. He's 4-0-1 in the UFC. And Ismail starts a new losing streak. He is 2-2 in the UFC. So what's next? Well, I think Nazim and Jared Gordon would be a fantastic scrap. And for Ismail, there isn't a clear opponent for him. But Claudio Puelles would be a fight. I don't think we need to rush him to top competition. Then we had Edmund Shabazian with a round 1 TKO over Dylan Budka. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Edmund. We all wanted to think Edmund could get a finish, but golly, Edmund just loaded up a beautiful combo and absolutely destroyed Dylan, put him on stilts, and Shabazian was able to follow up and get an easy finish. And the stats speak to that. Edmund landed 7 total and significant strikes with the knockdown. Dylan only landed 1 total and significant strike. So now Edmund starts a new winning streak. He's 2-2 since 2023. Dylan extends his losing streak to 3. He's still searching for his first UFC win since his Contender Series contract. And where they go next, I honestly doubt that Dylan stays with the UFC. But if he does, he can fight Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And Edmund versus Paul Craig would be a blast. Then in the co-main, we had Yusuf Zalal with a unanimous decision over Calvin Kattar, a fight I got wrong and a fight I wish transpired differently. Because this fight was all about Yusuf just moving and circling to avoid the boxing of Calvin where he couldn't plant his legs and let combos go. And Yusuf was lunging in for long strikes and trying to mix in some grappling. But Calvin had great takedown defense. But he just ended up getting frustrated as the fight wore on because he landed less than 10 strikes a round until round 3. He had his back up against the wall, and he finally let it fly and take chances in round 3, but it was way too late. Calvin definitely won the final round, but that wasn't going to be enough. Although, it seemed like Yusuf was trying to avoid the fight. You do have to credit his movement. The Moroccan Devil continues to win. But maybe Kattar should have thrown more kicks because he was having success there or tried for takedowns himself. But I just feel like he should have just went for it more, especially because the skid that he's on at this point in his career. He started working with Faraz Zahabi to try to change his game up, but that didn't do enough. Zalal continues his winning ways. Statistically, Calvin landed 38 total and significant strikes. Yusuf landed 75 total and 74 significant, so a lot higher in volume, but was 0 for 8 in takedown attempts. So Calvin extends his losing streak to 4. His last win was in January of 2022. He moves down 4 spots in the rankings to number 14. And Yusuf extends his winning streak to 7. He's 4-0 since he's returned to the UFC. He enters the rankings at number 12. Now, I do think Yusuf is going to get another top 15 opponent next. I think Dan Ige would be the way to go. And I don't think Calvin's going to retire at this point. So a match with Sadiq Yusuf would be fun for both fighters and the fans. But then we had the underdog victory coming through. I try to tell y'all, Jared Cannonier with a round 4 TKO over Gregory Rodriguez. 50 G's, fight of the night for Jared Cannonier. But man, oh man, did Gregory put it on Jared early. But Jared was able to weather the first round. He was knocked down a few times, but he came back strong in round 2. As Gregory seemed to use round 2 to just kind of rest and recover and try to get back on track because he was throwing power shot after power shot. Then by round 3, Gregory was trying to be aggressive again, but Jared was landing the cleaner shots and was completely a fresher fighter than Gregory. You know, you could tell by the body language because round 1, Gregory had his hands high just throwing bombs, and then they started getting lower, and Jared was able to land clean because he had no defense. But both men failed at takedown attempts, which could have been game-changing here. Credit both guys for avoiding those. But round 4, Gregory just was completely down. If we're playing a video game and they have their stamina bar, his stamina bar was probably to here. And the Killer Gorilla just pounced on him and got him out of there round 4. Beautiful display by the 40-year-old Jared Cannonier. Him and Angela Hill repping the 40 squad. Statistically, Jared landed 109 total strikes, 98 of them significant with a takedown. He was 1 for 3 in takedown attempts. He had 2 knockdowns and 2 minutes and 9 seconds of control time. And Gregory landed 95 total strikes, 93 of them significant with 2 knockdowns of his own, but he was 0 for 3 in takedown attempts. So Jared ends that 2-fight losing skid. He starts a new winning streak. He's 2-2 since 2023 and stays at number 7 in the rankings. And Gregory ends his 3-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He's 3-2 since 2023. And for Gregory, much like I had thought, he needs to prepare for 5 rounds. He cannot let it all go in 5 minutes. He's going to have to pace himself. But what's next? Well, Jared's really faced most of the division, but give us a banger. Paulo Costa, the Killer Gorilla. That is a stylistically appealing fight for both men. And for Gregory, a rebound against Roman Kopylov would be an absolute banger as well. But solid little fight night card. Bravo to the Killer Gorilla. Yusuf Salal finds a way. Edmund Shabazian, Nazim Sadiqov with some big shots. And Andre Petroski finally gets a decision win. But this weekend, we're headed to the Northwest, back to my old home in Seattle. The prelims start at 3 p.m. Pacific, the main card at 6 p.m. Pacific, all on ESPN+. To preview this card, I mean, it's taken major blows, but it seems to keep on going with the Fugit and Billy Goff pullout. There's been multiple injuries, fights moved, new fights added. Now we have new fighters signed just for this card. But there are 4 quality fights, some young, fun talent, but it's just taken too many blows to be super excited about. I think Cruz having the injury and retirement really takes a blow to this card. And the Edson and Steve Garcia fight, which I was really excited about, as being off really hurts. But I would say the main card really has a lot of nobodies and lopsided fights on this card. You can expect finishes, so that might be fun. I'm previewing it a 5 out of 10. Some good fights we will not break down. We have Cage Warriors alum Modestus Bukakis taking on Rafael Cerqueira. We have Contender Series alums Mansour Abdul Malik taking on Nick Klein. Nursultan Ruzaboev is taking on Tough Enough alum Eric McConaughey in his UFC debut. We have Alonzo Menefield taking on Julius Walker, and Gene Silva taking on Contender Series alum Mel Sick Bogdasarian. But we're going to kick it off in the prelims. We have Ricky Simón, 32 years old with a 20-6 record, taking on Javid the Snow Leopard Basharat, 29 years old with a 14-1 record. Now, Ricky Simón has kind of lived on the prelims, but I'm here for it because he typically brings a lot of action and fun to his fights. He really is a solid fighter. He's not a fan favorite. He does win a lot of decisions, but Javid is solid, but more unproven. He's basically hitting his prime right now at 29 years old, so the time is now for him. A loss for either man would be brutal, especially for Ricky as he's in his prime and needs to prove himself. Breaking this down, Ricky trains out of Syndicate MMA. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a King of the Cage, Titan FC, Contender Series, and LFA alum and former champion. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He's 1-3 since 2022, and 6 of his 20 wins are via knockout. Now, Javid trains out of Extreme Couture. He's a Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He's 1-1 since 2023. 6 of his 14 wins are via submission, 5 via knockout, so 11 of his 14 wins via finish, and he does have a 3-inch leg reach advantage. Now, I've really been back and forth in this fight, but I think the difference for me is that Ricky has more experience, and with his back against the wall right now, I do think he's got quality wins against guys like Jack Shore, Rafael Assunção. He even beat Merab Dvalishvili, all of these guys by finish in his career. And for Javid, he hasn't got a finish in the UFC yet, and although he's about to be in his prime, I do expect Ricky to take more chances here. I think he's going to win a grinded-out battle, and it's going to pay off for him. For that reason, I'm taking an underdog. The dog's coming to eat. Ho, ho. I'm taking Ricky Simón, but I am avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Now, another very, very close match made here. We have Jan the Hulk Cutelaba, 31 years old with an 18-10-1 record, taking on Ibo the Last Ottoman Aslan, 28 years old with a 14-1 record. Now, although this is a close matchup, we are going to get some violence. Jan, only at 31 years old, has had such a wild up-and-down roller coaster career in the UFC. He typically does lose via finish, so that is a major thing to note here. But he's only had one finish himself since 2019. Now, Ibo has less pro experience than Jan does in the UFC, but has 6 consecutive knockouts and 3 of them in the UFC. Breaking it down, Jan is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of the MMA Factory. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 13 of his 18 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 10 losses are via submission, and 3 via knockout. Now, Ibo trains out of is a Brave and Contender Series alum. He's on a 6-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC, and all 14 of his wins are via knockout. He is rocking a 2.5-inch reach and leg reach advantage. Again, very tough fight to pick. I'd like to think that Jan would have learned his lessons and found a way to start stacking up wins now that he's in the middle of his prime. But he's been known to get finished and has burned me many times before. Ibo is going to be aggressive and make this a brawl. Jan likes to do that, but it does usually cost him. If he wants to secure a win, I'd think he'd rely on his grappling. But I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see a second round. But I'm feeling frisky again. I'm taking another dog. The dog's coming to eat. I'm taking Jan Cutelaba, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Now, with all the fights moved, I'm surprised this is in the prelims. We got the hometown fighter, Andre Touchy-Feely, 34 years old with a 24-11 record, taking on Melquizil Malkathi Costa, 28 years old with a 21-7 record. Now, the fight the hometown kid Andre is getting is a tough young scrapper. But Andre is becoming the best version of himself today in his prime, although he's at the back of his prime at 34. He's also had a lot of ups and downs in his UFC career. But the time is now to stack up wins, and I think that's going to pay a lot of dividends here. Breaking it down, Andre trains out of Team Alpha Male. He has the most split decision wins in UFC featherweight history with 4. He's a Cage Fury and King of the Cage alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-2 since 2023. 10 of his 24 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 11 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. And he does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, Melquizil is an LFA alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 2-2 since 2023. 7 of his 21 wins are via knockout, 7 via submission, so 14 of his 21 wins come via finish. I do expect there will be some pressure on Andre to perform as he's from Federal Way, which is a suburb of Seattle, but I do think he outclasses Melquizil on his feet. If Milk can get Feely down and hold him there, this will be an interesting fight, but Andre has good grappling of his own, and I think that's the difference. I'm taking Andre Touchy-Feely. I am putting him on a parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the main card. We have Rob Font, 37 years old with a 21-8 record, taking on Gene Matsumoto, 25 years old with an undefeated 16-0 record. Again, poor Rob goes from a legendary retirement fight opportunity to a short notice fight against an up-and-coming undefeated prospect. Quite the change of scenery for Font, but he's always game. Rob has had to face former champions, legends in the game, young prospects, a mix of all of those of late, but his last win might have even been his best in a while. Breaking it down, Rob is an orthodox fighter. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 2-2 since 2023. 9 of his 21 wins are via knockout. And he does have a 3-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Gene is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's undefeated on a 16-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC. And I do understand Gene is a solid up-and-coming fighter. I do think he has a bright future, but these Vegas odds are just damn right disrespectful to Rob, who just beat a better up-and-coming prospect in Kyler Phillips, in my opinion. But Gene's last win was even very debatable, but impressive against Brad Katona. Gene definitely relies on his grappling, and that will be the deciding factor because Rob's been known to be susceptible there. Kyler was able to get 4 takedowns in 5 attempts in that last fight against Rob and almost had a full round of control time, but he actually gassed himself out as the fight went on. I'm not expecting that to happen with Gene, but I think Rob can avoid enough takedowns and outstrike the young Matsumoto. So I'm taking another dog. The dogs are coming to eat. I'm taking Rob Font. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the co-main event. We have Brendan All-In Allen, 29 years old with a 24-6 record and the number 9 next to his name, taking on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, 31 years old with a 13-2-1 record and the number 12 next to his name. Now, this is another big-time matchup with serious implications for both men. They have fought the long way up the ladder in the UFC, and they are now in their primes at 31-29. Brendan definitely has been passing all the tests with flying colors, but his last fight he was put into his place as Nasruddin was able to defend the takedowns of Allen, and he didn't have a path forward without the grappling, and he gassed himself out trying to get him down. Breaking this fight down, Brendan trains out of Killcliff FC. He has a black belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 6 fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He's a Legacy FC and Contender Series alum and an LFA alum and former champion. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He's 4-1 since 2023, and 14 of his 24 wins are via submission. Now, Anthony is an orthodox fighter. He has a brown belt in BJJ. His last 2 fights have been performance of the night. He's also showing up. He's showing out. He has the most significant ground strikes landed in a UFC middleweight bout, which was 97 against Michel Pereira. He has the most takedowns attempted in a UFC middleweight bout at 29 against Pereira in that same fight. He had the largest striking differential in a UFC middleweight bout. He had 128 against Michel Pereira. He has the latest knockout in a UFC middleweight bout, 2 minutes and 22 seconds in round 5 against Michel Pereira. He had the 2021 submission of the year against Rodolfo Vieira because of Rodolfo's jiu-jitsu background. He's an LFA alum and former champion. He's also a Contender Series alum. He's on a 6-fight winning streak, and 8 of his 13 wins are via submission. Now, I actually never realized these two fought back in 2016 for an LFA title, so I went back and watched. The fight actually went a lot like I thought it would today, with Allen starting hot, both men showcasing beautiful grappling, reversals, and transitions. But for both men, a whole 9 years later, that are now in their primes on the biggest stage in the world, it's going to be fun. Anthony had a slower rise to get to this point. I would say he's faced lesser competition until this past year. In 2024, Anthony Hernandez has really put it on in impressive fashion, and Allen hasn't really looked as impressive with a close split decision victory over Chris Curtis, who had a torn hamstring halfway through the fight. And his fight against Imavov back in September was not much to write home about. Now, Anthony just typically rockies guys. What I mean by that is he avoids enough shots early and tires his opponents out with their offense, and then he comes out strong. And that very well could be the case here. He really wore on Brendan Allen late in their fight in the LFA. But I do think that this is a 3-round fight that it favors Brendan. I think Brendan's striking is going to be a little bit better. I think he'll prepare himself, come in better shape, and he'll be prepared to go balls to the wall for 15 minutes. He knows what he's in for. But I do believe his team should have him prepared, especially with what happened in the LFA and in the Nasruddin fights. So I'm taking Brendan Allen, but I am avoiding him on any parlays. That's really a coin flip fight. I like both fighters. I just hope it's a good scrap. Then to the main event, we have Henry Triple C Cejudo, 38 years old with a 16-4 record and the number 7 next to his name, taking on Song the Kung Fu Kid Yadong, 27 years old with a 21-8-1 record and the number 8 next to his name. Now, since his retirement fight, Cejudo has fought basically 2 of the best bantamweight champions of all time. He lost a close decision against Aljamain Sterling, more of a lopsided one against Barab, but he hung in there. I wouldn't say Song isn't at that level. I would say his striking and power are legit, but Henry has fared well against very good fighters like Song. Song has showcased improved takedown and defense and grappling of his own, but I'm not sure if it's enough at this stage in his career at 27. Breaking this down, Henry has a freestyle wrestling style. He has a yellow belt in Shotokan Karate. He trains out of Fight Ready MMA here in Phoenix. He's won gold in the 2008 Olympics for freestyle wrestling. He's the former UFC bantamweight champion with 1 defense and flyweight champion with 1 defense. That's where the Triple C nickname comes in. 2 belts at the UFC, 1 gold medal. He's the 7th 2-divisional champion in UFC history and only the 4th that's had simultaneous straps where they haven't vacated the other belt. This all started with his 2018 upset of the year against Demetrius Johnson. That year, he was also inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's a Legacy FC alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's 3-2 since 2019, but 0-2 since he's returned from retirement. 8 of his 16 wins are via knockout. Now, Song has a Sandus style. He trains out of Team Alpha Male. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 9 of his 21 wins are via knockout, and he has a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, this fight really does come down to if Henry is taking it seriously or not. There was a video this past week of him smoking what it looked to be like a joint. I kind of wonder if he was trolling, because you never know with him these days, trying to get Song to think he's not taking it seriously. But he hasn't looked bad since coming back. And again, we want to hate on him, but he has fought the best of the best in the bantamweight division. I do think he's taking this seriously because he's a competitor. He has a great team. They have a high fighting IQ. And Song is going to have he's going to have the length and power advantage, but I do think Henry's going to find a way to eliminate some of that. I expect him to put in a great game plan with a lot of grappling coming Song's way. And I think Henry will have the advantage over 5 rounds. Again, this is all if he is taking this seriously like the champion Cejudo we have known. We forget Henry has defeated guys like TJ Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz, Marlon Moraes, Mighty Mouse, and Sergio Pettis. So I'm not saying he's still prime Henry Cejudo, but I feel like as the underdog with these odds, he's going to come in and show the world. I'm taking Henry Cejudo. I'm taking another dog. They're coming to eat. Lots of great dogs to pick. Lots of fun money opportunities here. But we have a fun card, not a stacked card, but it is going to happen back in Seattle. And then next weekend, we head back to Vegas for the Apex. We have a solid fight night card with some violent matchups. That will be headlined by Manel Kopp and Asu Almabayev. So lots in store when it comes to UFC and MMA. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, episode 86. I'll see you next week.